Amazing bride exposed at the altar, the transformative truth unveiled by the hidden heroine. Sarah stood in the church, a radiant vision in white as she adjusted her veil, the sunlight filtering through stained glass illuminating the moment. Every detail was perfect, a carefully arranged mosaic of her dream blended with Jared's privilege. Yet, in the shadows, anxiety lurked like a specter. She glanced at Mia, her best friend, who wore a forced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. An unsettling tension twisted in Sarah's gut. Beneath the festive murmurs of well-wishers and laughter was something darker, unspoken. Mia had unearthed a truth that threatened to unravel the tapestry of her life. The thought of her estranged mother, a ghost of the past, stirred something deep within Sarah, a mix of fear and disbelief tangled in her heart. They had rehearsed lines of perfect far too long for Sarah to even consider that her mother had reinvented herself right there in Willow Creek. Could it really be true that the elusive woman, once the town's pride, was right beneath the surface? The thought sent electric tingles through her. As Sarah repositioned her bouquet, she overheard Jared laughing, charming, the very picture of confidence. She loved him, yet doubts wormed their way into her thoughts. Would he accept her as part of his world if the truth resurfaced? The promise of happily ever after felt more a burden than a blessing now. She needed Mia's support, her steady presence, yet today was not one for confessions. Settled deep inside her, the worry squirmed painfully, which only amplified as Mia approached, a troubled look etched on her face. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A hush spread across the congregation as Mia hesitated, measuring her words like a painter choosing colors for a canvas. Each beat rang heavy with potential devastation. Sarah's eyes danced from Mia to the seated guests, oblivious to the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. Who was she before all this? The longing for a family identity clashed violently with the fears lurking in her subconscious. Mia's breath came shallow, her loyalty teetered on a knife's edge. To speak was to shatter Sarah's world. The impending ceremony felt like a train speeding down tracks with no brakes. Would revealing her mother's truth be freeing, or would it strip away the last bits of joy Sarah clung to? The tension in the room intensified, the air thick with unsaid words. As the officiant began, a silence blanketed the church, heavy and pregnant with expectation. Mia felt time warp, each second felt like an eternity. Her heart was a drum echoing in her chest, pounded by the weight of their shared history and the crumbling illusion of Sarah's perfect narrative. The heartbeat of fear harmonized with a desperate hope. Would Sarah rise from the ashes of her confined existence, or would she crumble beneath the truth? Then, with a voice layered in trembling resolve, Mia stood at the altar. Every eye turned to her, the air crackling with unanswered questions. Wait. There's something you don't know about Sarah. Gasping erupted in the pews, and in that moment of heightened disbelief, the world around Sarah began to fragment. Eyes widened, mouths agape, and the carefully constructed dream trembled on the brink of oblivion. What had Mia just done? As Sarah stood frozen, the weight of Mia's words settled on her like lead. The room buzzed with hushed whispers, opaque shapes in her peripheral vision, the disconcerting grins of her wedding guests now distorted into faces of doubt and disbelief. Her heart raced, each pounding beat echoing the sudden chaos unleashed within her. What had Mia chosen to reveal? The question spun in her mind, intertwined with panic and confusion. Mia, please, Sarah managed, her voice barely rising above the collective gasp. The wedding, the love, her entire vision for the future hung in the balance like a precariously stacked house of cards. She longed to lock eyes with Jared, to see his unwavering belief in her, but dread held her captive. What if her past, tangled in shadows, eclipsed every moment they had shared. "Sarah, I didn't want to keep this from you," Mia said, her words rushing forth like a tidal wave crashing onto the shore. "But it's important. You deserve to know the truth before you take this step." Her gaze pleaded for understanding, yet Sarah felt betrayed not just by her best friend, but by the entirety of her own history. "Is this about my mother?" The words came out sharper than intended, but Sarah couldn't mask her fear. Her mother had always been a sore subject, a downed banner she kept hidden lest anyone recognize the fragility of acceptance. "Yes," Mia confirmed, her voice quaking yet resolute. "She's here, Sarah. She's alive. Right in this town." "She's." Just then, the officiant cleared his throat, an attempt to regain control over the dwindling order of the ceremony. But it was too late, the veil of normalcy had been ripped apart, and the reality of Sarah's life began to unravel before her very eyes. A swell of emotions surged within her, indignation, grief, a burning desire for clarity among the confusion. Was it really true? The woman who abandoned her, the figure of rejection she struggled to piece together in her mind, stood hidden among her friends and family? The very fabric of her identity was fraying at the edges, and for the first time, she felt the intoxicating rush of anger simmering behind her facade of composure. What do I even call her? Mother? Stranger? The questions lashed at her insides while everyone waited, a wall of eager faces yearning for the next move. Determination brewed against the waves of emotional disruption. She wouldn't let this moment define her. The officiant hesitated, bewildered by the opportune moment morphing into chaos. Perhaps we should pause," he began, but Sarah could hardly hear him over the thundering drum of her pulse. No longer could the whispers dictate her existence. Today was meant to be the conclusion to one chapter, but the realization surged. It was merely the prologue to something far more complex, a query into her authenticity and worth. With resolve tightening her grasp on the bouquet, she faced the crowd, each face still a fleeting blur. "Mia, I need to know everything," she finally declared, her voice emerging stronger. The urgency echoed through the church like a shot of electricity. "I won't step into this marriage without understanding my truth." It was a declaration, not just to those before her but for herself. She was ready to confront her past, regardless of the unknown. The room held its breath, a singular unit of anticipation. How deep did the truth run, and could she even face it? As she turned to face her best friend, a mix of fear and newfound determination settled within. In finding her mother, would she discover healing, or were there more buried secrets waiting to shatter her reality? With every potential revelation, the threads of her life seemed to interweave, threading a path toward wholeness or total disarray. It was time to unearth the hidden nuances of her story. Mia's eyes flickered with vulnerability. That look was only part of the battle Sarah had yet to fight. They would have to dive into the depths together. And as the church seemed to sigh, a decision loomed in the air: what lay beyond this point? Would she dare to confront her mother and the shadows of her past, or would she retreat into the comfort of ignorance? Sarah felt the atmosphere shift as if a storm was brewing just beneath the surface. The hushed murmurs of her guests felt oppressive, a tide of anxious energy that made the air thick with scrutiny. She needed clarity, a way to craft meaning from the chaos that Mia had unleashed. "Tell me everything," she repeated, her voice commanding yet tremulous. The urgency in her tone drew Mia closer. "We can go somewhere private," she suggested, glancing nervously at the guests, whispering and shooting curious glances their way. But Sarah shook her head resolutely. She didn't want to retreat. No more hiding away from discomfort, she wanted to face the truth head-on, every edge and jagged piece. "There's no time," she insisted, her heart hammering wildly as a sense of fierce independence surged through her veins. "If I'm going to do this, I need to do it now." Mia looked distraught but resigned. "Fine. Just promise me you'll stay open. It's more complicated than you think." With a nod, Sarah braced herself. "Just start talking. Taking a deep breath, Mia began. Your mother, she had her reasons for leaving. It wasn't just about abandoning you. She was caught up in something dangerous. Something that made her think leaving was the only option. The words were like shrapnel, tearing through the fabric of Sarah's understanding. Dangerous? What do you mean? There was a man, someone she got involved with. I've heard rumors that he's connected to things you wouldn't want to be associated with. She tried to break free but couldn't. I think she still feels the weight of those choices, Mia explained, her voice trembling. Why don't I know any of this? Sarah shot back, her emotions bubbling to the surface. Why did you keep it from me? I wanted to protect you. We used to talk about our dreams, remember? I thought that some things were better left buried, and I didn't want to break that bond we had, Mia said, guilt rippling across her features. As Sarah processed these revelations, the chaos of the ceremony faded away. Instead, an uncharted territory emerged, a path that beckoned her to step forward into the unknown. She gazed into Mia's eyes, searching for the unwavering loyalty she had once relied on. You should have trusted me. Regret pooled in Mia's expression as she continued, she's here, Sarah. I can take you to her, but I can't promise you how she'll react. What if it goes horribly wrong? Horribly wrong. Those words lodged themselves firmly in Sarah's throat, igniting a whirlwind of uncertainty. Still, it paled in comparison to the weight that had been hovering over her life of not knowing, of feeling incomplete from the roots of her existence. I have to know, she insisted with a newfound fierceness. It's my life, my identity. I can't step into my future with Jared without understanding where I came from. Mia nodded slowly, then grasped Sarah's hand tightly. Okay, let us go. They moved toward the exit, every footstep echoing with trepidation. Sarah felt an undeniable shift within. The confrontation with her past loomed ahead like a cliff's edge, exhilarating and terrifying all at once. As they stepped outside into the bright sunlight, Sarah's heart raced. The questions latched on tighter. What would she even say to a woman whose choices had haunted her for years? Would finding her mother lead to answers or further torment? The gravity of the situation pressed down like an anchor, but against it, Sarah felt the flicker of something new, determination to not only discover her truth but to reclaim her narrative. And as they drove toward the unknown, she became painfully aware of the stakes at hand. Could she face the abyss of her existence, or would it consume her completely? In the back of her mind, a quiet whisper echoed relentlessly. Was her mother still a stranger, or could she finally become the bridge to understanding the woman she had yearned for all her life? Unbeknownst to Sarah, the journey ahead would unravel more than just a connection to her past. It would challenge her very sense of self, testing the depths of her courage. What awaited her was more than just a reunion. It was a reckoning. As the car glided through familiar streets now clouded by the urgency of her mission, Sarah felt a mixture of adrenaline and trepidation coursing through her veins. Each passing landmark carried echoes of her childhood: the swings in the local park, the bakery her parents used to frequent, all remnants of a life painted over with an incomplete understanding. Little did she know, she was driving towards a version of herself that had been waiting, just beneath the surface, to be unearthed. What do you think she'll say? Mia's voice broke the silence, a tremor in her tone that mirrored the tension thrumming in Sarah's chest. I don't know, Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. But I need to confront her. I've spent too much time living in the shadow of someone I don't even know. Mia nodded. Just remember, whatever she did, she had her reasons. But that notion stuck in Sarah's throat like a stubborn lump. Reasons. Justifications for abandoning her, for walking away from the life they could have shared. Could any reasoning ever truly mitigate the pain of being left behind? Fragments of Sarah's life played out in her mind, a tapestry woven with longing for a mother she had never known, a yearning that as an adult transformed into a resounding thirst for clarity. Yet, now the weight of it felt more like an anchor pulling her deeper into unknown waters. When they arrived at the nondescript apartment complex, anxiety settled in her stomach like a heavy stone. This location, simple and unassuming, concealed a web of complicated emotions and unresolved narratives. "Are you ready?" Mia asked, her concern palpable. Sarah exhaled slowly, feeling the urgency of her mission transform into steely resolve. "I have to walk through this door. No matter what happens, I won't let fear steal this moment from me." The two women approached the apartment door, its surface worn and chipped, a symbol of the scars they all carried. As Mia held her breath, Sarah raised her hand and knocked decisively. After a moment that stretched into eternity, a woman opened the door. Her face, marked by lines of experience and shadowed by regret, instantly recognized Sarah. A flicker of recognition ignited in her eyes, immediately followed by a veil of confusion. "Sarah," her mother breathed, the name hanging heavily in the air. "Why did you leave?" Sarah's voice, though shaky, was infused with the resolve to peel back years of silence. Her mother's gaze darted away, the hesitation palpable. "I didn't want to hurt you," she started, her tone tremulous, as if memories crashed like waves against a shore. "I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me?" The retort escaped Sarah before it fully formed. "You kept me in the dark. Your protection shattered my life into pieces." As the confrontation unfolded, each word forged a deeper path into Sarah's core, stirring the chaotic emotions from within. Each revelation felt like carving out her own senses, painful but necessary. The realization dawned on her: she was no longer the little girl on the playground, searching for a mother. She was a woman demanding her story, reclaiming the agency that had been denied to her for so long. Mia stood back, silent but supportive, watching the two women dance around their memories, veering closer to confrontation yet pulling away with each painful truth that emerged. And then, against the backdrop of tearing emotions, Sarah caught a glimpse of something her mother rarely revealed: a flicker of vulnerability. It was fleeting but raw, a glance at the woman who had made choices born out of desperation. Could there be redemption in this? As the air thickened with accusations and unsaid truths, Sarah resolved to delve deeper. The moment called for vulnerability, not barricades. "You owe me the truth. Not just about why you left, but about everything: who I am, who you are. I refuse to continue this cycle of silence." In that moment, Sarah felt herself transformed by the weight of her own words, every syllable carving a new facet of her identity. This was no simple meeting, it was a reclamation of power. She had unknowingly surrendered for years. But just as her mother drew a breath to respond, a loud crash echoed from the back of the apartment. It was an interruption, a startling reminder that not all chaos was resolved. The dynamic between them shifted again, danger threading through the air. What lurked behind that noise? What dark secret had she stumbled upon, one that could change everything Sarah thought she understood about her mother? As uncertainty coiled tightly around her, Sarah steeled herself for whatever revelation awaited. This journey was just beginning, and the stakes had grown even higher. The crash reverberated like a gunshot through Sarah's tense frame, forcing her to momentarily detach from the emotional confrontation. Her mother's face blanched, any remaining color draining away as her gaze flickered toward the noise. Something was amiss, and the frail thread of their burgeoning dialogue snapped under the weight of an unspoken fear. "What was that?" Sarah asked, her tone sharpening with instinctive concern. I don't know," her mother stammered, glancing around the dimly lit apartment. The area felt charged, the air thick with the unmentioned secrets that hung like dust particles in suspension. Mia, having observed from a safe distance, stepped forward, her protective instincts kicking in. "Maybe we should check," she suggested cautiously, her eyes darting between Sarah and her mother. But Sarah was already moving, drawn by an unseen force of urgency. The confrontation with her mother had ignited a flicker of courage within her, one she wasn't willing to let fade. She stepped over the threshold of the modest living room, the stark surroundings a pitiful backdrop to the confrontation she hoped would unravel a lifetime of misunderstanding. "Stay here," Mia urged, but Sarah forged ahead, propelled by an innate need to confront whatever lay hidden. As she navigated the narrow hallway, her heart began to race. Every step echoed with the uncertainty of what lay beyond the threshold of her mother's reality. She could feel it, the burgeoning possibility, the secrets that might now be unearthed. Were they merely missteps of the past, or something far more sinister? Reaching a door at the end of the hall, she paused, her breath suspended in anticipation. She exchanged a brief look with Mia, who stood vulnerably at her back, then pushed the door open. Inside, the world exploded into chaos. A cluttered room full of dusty boxes and half-opened cupboards met her eyes, but it was the figure hunched over on the floor that captured her attention. A man, disheveled and wild-eyed, was rummaging through a box, scattering its contents everywhere. At the sight of Sarah, he froze, and in the silence that followed, the air thickened with newfound tension. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, her voice firm despite the quiver in her chest. His gaze flickered back to the doorway, and she understood he was assessing his options: leave or confront. I need to find something," he managed, his voice a mix of desperation and fear. "Not without explaining yourself," Sarah shot back. The surreal situation felt like a delicate balancing act. She'd come here to confront her past, yet this uninvited disturbance added layers of complexity to her mission. "What are you looking for? What do you have to do with her?" He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting something. "It's not what you think," he said, voice dropping to a near whisper. "Your mother, she's mixed up in something dangerous." The term echoed like a bell tolling in Sarah's mind. What could possibly connect her mother to danger? Her thoughts raced. Sarah's entire existence had been marred by an absence she was only just beginning to reconcile. Now, the prospect of a hidden life fraught with peril challenged everything she thought she knew. "Start talking," Sarah ordered, stepping further into the room, weighing her options. This wasn't just a case of confronting her mother anymore, this was an unexpected bifurcation on her path of self-discovery. As the man began to explain, words tumbling out in a panicked rush, Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her. Each detail unraveled new strands of her mother's narrative, but what was emerging was not a story of abandonment. Instead, it became a complex tale woven with secrets, choices wrought by fear, and a life painted in shades of gray. Just then, the front door crashed open, echoing with an ominous finality, and Sarah's heart sank. Their confrontation was about to become much more perilous. She couldn't escape the feeling that time was ebbing away, and with it, the opportunity to discover the truth. What new threat had just entered the picture, and would it unravel everything Sarah had begun to piece together? In that moment, she understood there would be no shielding her evolving identity from the darkness at the core of her mother's past. As footsteps thundered down the corridor, adrenaline surged through her, churning with the realization that this moment was the fulcrum upon which her newfound strength would pivot. She was no longer waiting for answers, she was ready to seize them, whatever the cost. But as those figures drew closer, Sarah braced herself for a confrontation that had the power to reshape her understanding of family, loyalty, and ultimately, herself. The noise reverberated, crashing against the walls like a storm, and Sarah felt the weight of every heartbeat. This was no longer just about confronting her mother, this moment was pivotal, standing at the intersection of her past and the unknown future. The man's frantic words rushed through her mind: danger, secrets, a hidden life, and now those very barriers were being tested as new figures approached. As the footsteps grew louder, a fierce resolve forged itself within her. She thought about her mother's frail demeanor, the sighs that lingered in the air whenever Sarah mentioned wanting to understand the past. It was as if a veil of silence had wrapped their conversations in a shroud, preventing the clarity she now craved. There was no more room for hesitation. She was done waiting for answers, it was time to demand them. "Who's coming?" She questioned the man, her voice low but steady, an anchor in the brewing storm. What is it you need from my mother? His eyes widened, and he attempted to gather himself, as if he was about to divulge knowledge that could change everything. She's in over her head, Sarah. There are people who want what she knows, people who stop at anything to get it. The implications sank in. Each word ignited a flame of determination within her. She was stepping closer to understanding a part of her life that had been shrouded in shadows. It was exactly the kind of clarity she needed to seize her own narrative. The moment she took another step forward, she recognized the undeniable truth: she could not simply drift through life any longer. The pounding footsteps paused just outside the door, a silence hanging for the briefest of moments. Sarah locked eyes with Mia, who had joined them at the threshold, and something unspoken passed between them. Their shared connection would be their strength, but Sarah couldn't ignore the truth that lay ahead. "Ready?" Mia mouthed, and Sarah nodded, steeling herself as the door swung open, revealing a pair of imposing figures cloaked in shadow, faces obscured. "What is going on here?" one of them thundered, stepping forward with an authority that echoed through the room. Without thinking, Sarah stepped in front of the man, positioning herself as a human shield. This was her mother's life and now her own in the balance. "I demand answers," she asserted, the words crystallizing her resolve. In that declaration, she felt a shift within herself, a deeper recognition of her power. "Tell me what's happening, or I swear I will make sure this ends now." The man behind her looked startled, adjusting to the transformation Sarah was undergoing. Could it be possible that she was finally harnessing the qualities she had only glimpsed within herself? Confident. Fierce. Determined to confront her family legacy head-on. The figures exchanged wary glances, weighing her words. Time seemed to elongate, seconds stretching into what felt like an eternity. In this tense silence, Sarah questioned whether they would cooperate, if they would unveil the truths lurking in the corners of her mother's world, or if her boldness would provoke a far more dangerous response. "I don't want any trouble," one of them finally replied, a hint of surprise softening his tone. "But you need to understand, your mother's choices carried weight heavy enough to bear consequences you can't imagine." Sarah's pulse quickened. With every revelation, she felt the dual weight of knowledge and responsibility collide within her. The gravity of her mother's past was no longer a distant specter, it was a living, breathing enemy approaching them now. "What do I need to do?" she whispered to herself, realizing that this moment a convergence of all she had avoided was where her true growth lay. She could no longer be the passive child longing for explanations, she had to step fully into her identity and claim her presence amid chaos. With newfound conviction, she raised her chin, determined to navigate the labyrinth of family secrets and embrace the unfolding conflict. The door between ignorance and insight was wide open, and Sarah was ready to charge through. As the tension thickened and the stakes rose, she knew the path ahead wouldn't merely challenge her understanding of family, it would ultimately redefine who she was meant to become. Just beyond the threshold lay answers, but what cost would the pursuit extract from her burgeoning self? The figures stepped forward, intentions hidden behind the facade of authority, and Sarah anchored herself, breathing through the rising tide of fear. Whatever the truth was, its revelation was now inevitable and transformative, yet fraught with peril. Would she emerge unscathed, or was she set to dive into a deeper abyss? The choice was hers, and as the figures advanced, Sarah prepared to confront not only the oncoming danger but the revelation of who she truly was meant to be. The air thickened, a tangible weight pressing against Sarah's chest as she faced the looming figures. It was as if the very fabric of reality shifted beneath her, unveiling a chasm of uncertainty teeming with potential and peril. She felt the adrenaline pulse through her veins, igniting her determination amidst the swirling chaos. No longer a passive observer, she stood defiantly in the storm, ready not just to confront this moment but to reshape it entirely. "Why are you here?" she pressed, her voice steady though her insides churned. The response was critical, each moment held the potential for revelation or destruction. She sensed Mia's eyes darting between the strangers and her, forming a silent alliance in a moment fraught with danger. The shorter of the two men took a hesitant step closer, a flicker of understanding crossing his features. "We're here because your mother made a decision. It's one that could unravel everything you know. She has information that could put you both at risk." With those words, the remnants of her childhood innocence peeled away, layer by layer. This was not just about her mother's past, it was the foundation of her own identity that was now under scrutiny. The very history she had sought to comprehend now came with shadowy implications, threatening her future. Sarah's resolve sharpened. What is it? What does she know? The urgency in her voice startled even herself, but it was a breaking point. She could no longer remain in the dark while her mother historically retreated. The taller man shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his companion as if debating whether to divulge more. "Your mother was involved in something dangerous. She chose to silence it, but it wasn't just about her, it involves you, Sarah. You're tied to this, maybe more than you realize." Her heart raced, a tsunami of questions crashed over her. Ties to danger. Shadows of deceit. How much did she truly know about herself? Her upbringing? Was she a victim of ignorance or the inheritor of secrets? Each query bore the weight of a potential revelation, a doorway to the dual identity she had yet to embrace. Suddenly, an idea took shape in her mind, a plan to coalesce her past with the truth ahead. If she could pry open the cracks of her mother's concealment, she might uncover the strength she had yet to acknowledge. The revelation was electric. Perhaps this confrontation could illuminate latent capabilities she had never explored. "Look, whatever choices my mother made," she said, her voice unwavering, "I want to understand. I need to understand." The last word punctuated her declaration, gifting it with considerable weight. It was one thing to shout for answers, it was another to declare her intent to absorb them fully. The men exchanged glances, and she sensed a shift in their demeanor. They might have underestimated her need for clarity and control. "You don't know what you're asking for," the shorter man warned, shadows coiling around him as he compared her youthful determination against the truths yet hidden. "I don't care about the risks," she retorted, the words tumbling from her lips with unexpected force. It was exhilarating, the rebirth of her agency. She was no longer the child seeking answers but the woman demanding them. Sarah understood now that the heart of her personal growth lay not only in acquiring knowledge but in mastering her reactions to it. "Then let us be frank," the taller man said, his tone urgent yet cautious. "We can't protect you from what comes next, but if you're willing to listen, we can guide you." "Guide me?" she repeated, embedding the phrase deep within herself. That single word became a promise, a signal of her shift from uncertainty to empowerment. She would actively shape her destiny, navigating the treacherous waters of her family's truth with an unyielding spirit. As the atmosphere crackled with tension, Sarah took a deep breath, solidifying her position within this maelstrom of revelation. Whatever she would discover in the coming confrontation held the potential to equip her with tools for resilience, wisdom, and perhaps a deeper understanding of her mother's choices. But as she prepared to delve into this web of secrets, anticipation gnawed at her. What if the knowledge extracted came at an unthinkably high cost? With that unsettling thought framing her resolve, Sarah steeled herself for what was to come, knowing that every decision would echo far beyond this moment. The stakes were rising now. Would she embrace the revelations of family ties and the challenges of transformation, or would some scars cut deeper than she could manage? The door to the past had swung open, and with it, the labyrinth of self-discovery awaited her. Her journey was only beginning, but the unfolding truth promised to demand far more than she had anticipated. As the weight of the moment pressed heavily on her shoulders, Sarah sensed the gears of her life shifting territory. She wasn't merely a bystander now, she was thrust into the role of architect, tasked with reconstructing her narrative from the rubble of secrets her mother had long buried. The men before her had cast a long shadow over everything she thought she knew, and even though fear crept into her consciousness, she felt adrenaline igniting her need for clarity. "Start talking," she demanded. Her voice had morphed into a weapon, unyielding and sharp. The urgency resonated not just in the air between them but within her as well, a clarion call to peel back layers of deception, to face the truth, however dark it loomed. She recognized that this was a threshold, a pivot point in her identity. Every moment of hesitation could cost her the power that knowledge could bestow. The taller man exchanged an uneasy glance with his companion again before he stepped forward, as if her resolve had compelled him to lead the way into murky territory. Your mother's involvement went deeper than we initially understood. We thought it was obscured, manageable. But it's more complex, and what she chose to conceal could expose you to grave dangers. How so? Sarah's mind raced. Each disclosure offered a chance to venture into uncharted territory, to discover not just her mother but her own capabilities. Each word could reveal a hidden thread binding them. What do you mean I'm involved? Who are you? He hesitated, seeming to weigh the gravity of sharing. We work for an organization that monitors threats, ones like the one your mother has attracted. You inherited more than just her looks, you might have inherited her mistakes. Questions formed a tangled web in her mind, but clarity began to emerge. Mistakes? Or choices? There's a difference. The line was drawn, and conviction emerged in Sarah's voice. The notion that her journey might mirror her mother's choices ignited a spark within her. She felt the yearning to rise above a shadowed lineage. Every choice carries consequences, Sarah. Your mother thought she could shield you, but her decisions have put you squarely in the crosshairs, the shorter man said, urgency tinged with pity. The seemingly insurmountable weight of generational secrets was starting to congeal into a dense mass of understanding. She was both a product of her lineage and a potential agent of change. What makes you think I need protection? She confronted, fists clenched at her sides, surfacing defiance blossoming in her chest. The walls her mother built were not going to constrain her. Because you have no idea what you're stepping into. The people who care about you may be at risk as long as you remain uneducated about the past, the taller man replied, his tone betraying a mix of concern and desperation. Sarah's ethical compass began spiraling into murky waters. Should she invoke every ounce of courage to confront the family truths, knowing they could endanger loved ones? Or should she consider sheltering those around her by remaining benignly ignorant? The choice loomed like a specter, and she felt an unlikely alliance form with her own instincts. Then let us not waste time, she said, her tone solidifying into steely resolve. Tell me everything you know. My ignorance is a risk to those I care about. I need to be equipped for whatever lies ahead. As she recognized the weight of her words, an exhilarating sense of control coursed through her. She was on the precipice of transformation, ready to decode her past in order to fortify her future. The act of serving as a conduit for knowledge and awareness now felt essential, not merely for survival but for empowerment. The men hesitated again, a silent question hanging in the air. Would she truly embrace this new reality, or was she blindly stepping into a dark abyss? With newfound determination, she locked eyes with the taller man, daring him to reveal what lay ahead. His next words could stir a tempest of hidden truths, challenges waiting beneath the surface of her family secrets. But one thought clouded her mind in a thrilling haze: what part of her mother's legacy would she reclaim, and would it ultimately liberate her or shackle her fate further? As the tension sharpened, Sarah realized the moment of truth loomed ever closer. The past she sought to confront was not just her mother's but her own, a reflection waiting to be uncovered. Would her journey unveil inner strength or propel her deeper into danger? She couldn't turn back now, she had to push forward even as the darkness beckoned. The silence stretched, taut as a drawn bow, until the taller man took a breath and began. Your mother was involved in something far beyond what you might imagine, operations that crossed lines you wouldn't believe. We believe she has files that contain names and locations of individuals unable to protect themselves. As he spoke, Sarah felt the ground beneath her shift again. Files, names, operations, it all seemed like a tangled knot now demanding her attention. This wasn't just her mother's past but an intricate puzzle she was suddenly tasked to piece together. Why didn't she come to me with this? She asked, the words escaping before she could measure their weight. There was an ember of anger glowing within her, fueled by a sense of betrayal. Because revealing the truth to you would have made you a target far too early, the man replied, his tone somber yet resolute. She thought she could protect you, Sarah, but she underestimated the lengths people will go to silence those who learn too much. It's why we're here to guide you through it. We can prepare you. The flickering anger morphed into anxiety as Sarah absorbed the enormity of his words. Preparation. What did that even look like? She was expected to walk into a world filled with shadows, enemies slicked with deceit. Yet, with each second that passed, she felt her trepidation replaced by a burgeoning determination to navigate this sprawling chaos. So, tell me how, she commanded, unwilling to soften her stance. Her earlier fear had transformed into a fierce hunger for not just answers, but power over the situation. The shorter man opened a worn leather folder, revealing documents stained with age, yet undeniably charged with significance. These are our findings regarding your mother's web of contacts and the threats that have emerged as a result. The people your mother sought to protect, the ones who could be hurt if you don't act. This is not just a matter of curiosity. It's about survival. An image of her mother flashed in her mind, that fierce woman who never backed down. Sarah had been sheltered, but now the curtain was drawn back, revealing the complexity of her inheritance. She felt trapped between admiration for her mother's strength and resentment for the chains of ignorance that had bound her. What must it take to not just unveil the truth but to dissect her own beliefs, to become something beyond a mere reflection of her mother's choices? Take the files, the taller man said firmly, sensing her internal struggle. You need to study them, comprehend the layers of reality your mother wanted to spare you from. It won't be easy, and it will confront your very essence. For a moment, the weight in her hands felt insurmountable, yet she pressed forward. She opened the folder, the contents overwhelming yet intoxicating. As her eyes darted from one name to another, she felt a pulse of recognition, as though she was discovering half-formed shadows of herself hidden within these documents. I need to understand more, she breathed, sensing a new vulnerability creeping into her resolve. With each revelation, Sarah's heart raced not just from fear but from a burgeoning sense of responsibility. She was not just here to uncover her mother's legacy, she was destined to redefine it. Prepare me, she said, determination flooding each syllable. I will be ready. The men exchanged knowing glances, satisfied with her response but wary of the gravity of what lay ahead. We can train you, the shorter man replied, a sliver of respect in his voice. But know this: it will demand everything you have. You'll confront not only external foes but also your own sense of self. The fight you're about to embark on will unravel more than just secrets. As she nodded, ready to embrace the gnawing fears of this labyrinthine journey, a new question began to bloom in her mind. Was she ready to confront not just the dangers around her, but the unknown parts of herself lurking in the shadows, waiting to be claimed? With files fluttering in her grasp and determination etched across her brow, she realized this was only the beginning. Would she rise as a force of reckoning or be consumed by the very legacy she sought to unearth? The answers loomed just beyond her reach, close enough to taste, yet shrouded in uncertainty. As the dramatic tension coiled once more, she understood that the road ahead would demand grit and sacrifice even as it held the promise of evolution. The moment had come to face her deepest fears. All she had was the weight of her chosen path and the flicker of hope igniting within her. Would her ultimate confrontation reveal a woman who could combat darkness, or would she falter in the face of her own truths? The months that followed were a whirlwind of transformation for Sarah. The journey that began abruptly at her wedding ceremony unfurled into a series of relentless challenges, lessons, and moments of undeniable clarity. Each revelation she absorbed from the files connected her deeper to her mother's past and ignited a fire within her, a drive to reclaim her narrative. Training became her lifeblood. Each session edged her closer to a version of herself she had only glimpsed before, a woman wielding knowledge as power, preparing to confront the shadows that had long loomed over her life. She had forged a bond with her unexpected allies, the men from the organization, and rallied behind their shared mission, to dismantle the networks that threatened innocence, including herself. Through tactical drills and strategic sessions, she transcended her previous self, becoming more than a mere reflector of trauma. She became a proactive force. The days turned to weeks, and with each passing moment, Sarah grew in confidence and competence. The once stagnant echoes of fear were gradually replaced by a sense of agency, pushing her toward personal and professional peaks she never thought possible. She was not just learning to navigate danger, she was evolving into a protector, a guardian forged in fire. As she uncovered the intricacies of her mother's decisions, she began to relate profoundly to her struggles, recognizing how deeply fear can constrict one's choices. The weight of her mother's silence transformed from a sense of betrayal into a lesson on the complexities of human choice. Sarah didn't merely cast her mother's actions aside, she infused them with understanding and empathy, thus reconciling her own feelings of abandonment. Each chapter of discovery prompted growth, reminding her that life is seldom defined purely by others' decisions but rather by how one chooses to respond. Months later, as she stood on the precipice of a looming confrontation with the very forces her mother had wrestled against, Sarah felt a deep satisfaction in the evolution of her identity. The weight on her shoulders had shifted, she was no longer burdened but empowered. Today she would use her knowledge, she would act as a decisive player rather than a passive victim. The transition to this endpoint was no mere happenstance, but the manifestation of relentless effort and self-discovery. Arriving at the meeting point, a secluded warehouse that exuded an air of treachery, Sarah's heart pounded, not from fear but invigorating anticipation. She had meticulously prepared for this moment, a convergence of every lesson learned, every skill honed. The impending showdown was not merely about her past or her mother's mistakes, it was about asserting her right to exist within the narrative and redefine the legacy she carried. As shadows thickened around her, the figures of her opposition emerged encoded with the deceptive allure of power, but Sarah met their gazes with unyielding composure. She approached them not as a fragile thread in a web of chaos, but as the architect of her destiny, confident in the knowledge that clarity lay within her reach. The stakes were monumental, her victory would illuminate her path forward and diminish the threats that had haunted her family for years. Enough with the games, she declared without hesitation, drawing upon the strength she had stoked within herself over the past months. The shackles of doubt that had previously bound her burst apart, leaving only the exhilarating sense of purpose. "I know what you're after, and you'll not wield intimidation over me again." The tension that followed their initial exchange shifted, and for the first time, Sarah saw uncertainty ripple across her adversary's expressions. This was her moment of triumph. She had seized back her narrative, rediscovered her power, and transformed fear into fierce resolve. Their intentions became clear as conversations swirled, exposing the consequences of her mother's choices. Yes, there was danger, but equally present were the possibilities of healing and growth. Sarah realized this confrontation was necessary and would define not only her fate but the safety of countless others her mother had fought to protect. As negotiations unfolded, Sarah pushed through the dense fog of intimidation that had once oppressed her, issuing demands and offering solutions, slowly navigating toward a resolution that could dismantle years of pervasive darkness. What transpired was not merely a completion of a mission but rather, the birth of an empowered individual standing beside her allies, united in their purpose. The meeting concluded with terms established, forces that had once conspired against her now at a reluctant truce. As she left the warehouse, light flickering through cracks in the walls, Sarah felt a profound sense of fulfillment wash over her. She had conquered not just the external threats but the shadows within herself that once loomed large. In reflection, Sarah knew the transformation she experienced held significance far beyond this confrontation. The true essence of her journey lay in the reclamation of her story and identity, a blend of resilience, wisdom, and grace. She was now a protector of her narrative, unafraid to delve deep into the complexities of her lineage, ready to face whatever challenges awaited beyond. As she took a deep breath and stepped into the sunlight, warmth enveloped her, radiating a newfound confidence. Sarah had achieved more than survival, she had conquered her past and embarked on a path of self-empowerment, finally ready to lead her story into the future. And just like that, Sarah transformed from the girl at the altar, burdened by secrets, into a woman fully realized, a beacon of strength sculpted by her trials and triumphs. It was time to write her next chapter, emboldened and unwavering. Now, if you resonate with Sarah's profound transformation and adventures, you need to subscribe now to the channel for more exclusive emotional stories that will inspire your own journeys. Leave a like now to support the algorithm and keep this content thriving. Your engagement matters. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey. We'd love to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the illustration of personal overcoming. True fans understand the importance of uplifting each other through these powerful stories.